Hello, and welcome to the Bamboo Lab podcast with your host, Peak Performance Coach Brian Bosley. Are you stuck on the hamster wheel of life, spinning and spinning, but not really moving forward? Are you ready to jump off and soar? Are you finally ready to sculpt your life? If so, you've landed in the right place. This podcast is created and broadcast just for you, all of you strivers, thrivers, and survivors out there. If you'd like to learn more about Brian and the Bamboo Lab, feel free to reach out to explore your true peak level at www.bamboolab3.com.
Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of the Bamboo Lab podcast. As always, I am your host, Brian Bosley, and I just want to start off by saying thank you to all of my amazing guests and all of you listeners and the Bamboo Pack subscribers out there. Because of you, our recent analytics, as of today, which is February 15th, 2023, one day after Valentine's Day, we are now being avidly subscribed to and followed on 6 continents, 45 countries now, 50 states, and 1,258 cities around this globe. Last Wednesday, we did a podcast 7 days ago, and since then we have added subscribers in 51 cities. And that's all has to do with the guests we bring on, and it has to do with all of you Bamboo Pack members out there who are subscribing, who are rating and reviewing us, hitting that like button, and like button. But most importantly, thank you for all of you for sharing the podcast with 3 loved ones each week. Because the guests we bring on, like we have on today, there is so much wisdom and potential life-changing information that is shared that this is stuff that everybody should be hearing. So I just want to say thank you to all of you before we get started. And I want to read one really nice, very simple heart letter we received this week. And it had to do with the episode we did a couple of weeks ago with CEO Anton Anderson out of California. And this gentleman texted me and said, I'm sitting by the pool listening to your recent episode now. Amy and I really enjoy your podcast. What an amazing story on on Anton's daughter and wife. I just can't imagine going through all of that and still keeping your business afloat. So it's stories of inspiration like that that really make a difference to the audience out there. So thank you very much to Scott for sending that out to us, because it really means a lot. All right, before we get started, I want to take a moment to dedicate this episode to Michigan State University, all of the students, the faculty, staff, and especially to the 3 students who lost their lives at a much too early age. The state of Michigan is divided between green and white and maize and blue. But today, we are all wearing green and white. We are all part of the Spartan family. This one's for all of you. All right. Well, before we introduce formally our amazing distinguished guest today, I want to read his bio. And his bio is pretty extensive, I love it. So, and I'm hoping it's up to date, because I know last week's episode it wasn't quite up to date for our guest, but we made some changes before we sent the podcast out. But today we have former Air Force Major and current CEO Bob Taylor on the podcast. Bob attained his mechanical engineering degree from Michigan State University in 1986 and then joined the Air Force 1 year later. Bob married the love of his life, Sara, on the 4th of July, that's very cool, during navigator training. He finished that training program as a distinguished graduate. Shortly thereafter, Bob was stationed at Griffiss Air Force Base in New York and then deployed to Diego Garcia, where he flew 11 combat missions during Operation Desert Storm. And there he received the Air Force's Air Medal. Shortly thereafter, Bob served as a KC-135 navigator and finally as an Air Force Academy liaison officer in the U.S. Air Force Reserves. Bob has definitely experienced and dealt with the impact of his service to our country over the past 30 years, and he has worked a great deal with the VA health system for the past 10 years. And finally, he embarked on researching this book that we're going to get into, and I have a copy of it here. It's titled From Service to Success. He has embarked on researching this book over the past 6 years, and he has firsthand experience with the gaps in veteran care. Since his transition from the military service, Bob has concentrated on the medical devices industry, where he has started 5 new companies and he has sold 2. Today, he's a busy man. Bob is the CEO, founder, and owner of Alliant Healthcare Products, Alliant Biotech, and MetaSurge, the Alliant family of companies located in the amazing state of Grand Rapids, Michigan. Since 2002, his verified service-disabled veteran-owned small business has sold over $750 million in healthcare products to the VA and to military hospitals all over the world. He's making a big difference. But his real cornerstone of his creation is this book that we're going to get into today, From Service to Success. The Patriot Promise Foundation, which he created to help drive down the rate of suicides among veterans and to provide a clear path forward as our warfighters transition into a new mission and new purpose following their service. This is the epitome of the tagline of this podcast. Ordinary person doing extraordinary things and impacting the world. Currently, Bob and the love of his life, Sara, live on Torch Lake in the beautiful northern Michigan. So, Mr. Bob Taylor, it's my honor to welcome you to the Bamboo Lab podcast.
Brian, thank you. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to spend some time with you. And to be honest with you, I'm sitting here squirming as you read that bio. It's, most veterans are pretty humble groups. So it's a little hard for me to listen to all the compliments, but I really appreciate the nice intro.
Well, that's the beauty of humble people. You don't have to say it because I will. What I really like to, when somebody does extraordinary things in life like you have and you are continuing to do, Bob, I think they should be told from other people's perspectives and from other people's mouths because it inspires other people to do the same thing. So we all appreciate you very much. And it's interesting, and I want to give a shout out to Liz Nolan for reaching out to me several weeks ago to talk about having you on the podcast because, Liz, you have done an amazing job of connecting Bob with myself, and you've been an amazing liaison to getting Bob on the podcast. So thank you, Liz. We both appreciate you very much. And so,
I'll echo that. Liz has done a phenomenal job, and she's a big help to me. So I'm really happy that that came across as you worked with her.
Oh, it did. It certainly did. Her communication skills and her consistency and her follow through are second to none for sure. All right. So Bob, you and I really, as a Bamboo Pack may not know this, we actually just met, or we just spoke for the first time, I should say, via the phone 15 or 20 minutes ago. So I'm interested to hear more about you. So can you share with all of us a little bit about who you are, where you came from, maybe your childhood? What were some inspirations that drew you and that made you the man you are today?
So sure. I grew up, I'm a Midwestern, grew up in Saginaw, Michigan. For the most part, had what I thought was a normal childhood. I think, as many children do, I had some rough patches, maybe experienced some tough times as a child. And that's really where I started to learn how to work through some of this adversity. But grew up, and like you said, I went to Michigan State University, and that's really on our minds. My son actually went there and graduated a few years ago. And I was just imagining what it would be like if he was still on campus. And I've talked to many people that have kids on campus and just the impact that this whole thing has had with this recent shooting there. And so my heart goes out to the parents and children that are experiencing some real trauma from just even being close to what happened, and especially the families there. But when I was on Michigan State's campus a long time ago, and I wasn't the most stellar student, but I worked hard and I made it through as a mechanical engineer. But I remember walking through campus my senior year, and I could hear my father's voice. He had passed away years earlier from Lou Gehrig's disease. And he had always wanted to be a pilot, and I could hear him kind of saying, I always wish I would have learned how to fly. And that was one of my dreams growing up. I used to have flying magazines and looking at the pictures of the inside of cockpits and just imagining myself. And so I took that inspiration, and I just happened to be right in front of the Air Force recruiting office, took a right turn, and about a year later, I was in officers training school.
Oh.
And so I went through that. I had a great active duty career. I was a navigator, bombardier in B-52s. And like you mentioned, I flew 11 combat missions in Desert Storm. And then I decided afterwards Congress was reducing some of the Air Force staff, and I just saw it as an opportunity to get out and practice some of my mechanical engineering, and found a job with a very good friend of mine in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and got into medical device engineering, and worked my way through that, learned every aspect of manufacturing and running a business, and then eventually had the good fortune of starting a new business with other partners, and then eventually starting this one on my own. And along the way was a reservist in KC-135s, and eventually finished my Air Force career, and have focused on doing as much as I can to help other veterans.
Well, I'm so excited to get into your book. And for the Bamboo Pack out there, because I think this book is so impactful, if you feel that you'd like to get a copy of this book, reach out to me, please. I will make sure that I will get you a copy of this book. I will buy you a copy of his book, From Service to Success. I want you to picture the book, because I have it right in front of me, and at the top of it is the American flag, and on the bottom, after the title, is just a picture of a pair of combat boots. Obviously, there's a person in them, and then there's a pair of little kids, bare feet, standing on top of the combat boots, which is so symbolic. And I've never seen a title that really symbolizes so much of what Bob is doing. He's helping veterans to make that transition from, being a warrior and from the life of service to now being a civilian. And how do you deal with that? Not just how do you survive, but how do you thrive through that? So I think it's just amazing. So please reach out to me. Everyone out there knows how to get with me. Go right to the link below and click on my website, and you can email me or text me from there. Bob, was there a particular, you walked by the Air Force recruiting station. Your dad wanted to be a pilot. As you were growing up, do you remember any person or group of people or a book or a movie or anything that really kind of, you say, was a little bit of a turning point in your life? They kind of inspired me to start moving in the direction of where you are currently.
Well, I would say that, I knew that my dad had been in the Army when he was much younger. He was actually a mortician in the Army during the Korean conflict. And then my uncle was what they refer to as a full bird colonel in the U.S. Army. He was a hospital administrator. And I just had a tremendous amount of respect for those two men. And I would say other members of my family, I had a cousin that served in Vietnam. So I think that, I think it runs in families where you have family members that serve, and it plants a seed, and that seed resides in you, and then it just takes the right trigger that gets you to join.
I see that a lot. I have a really good friend, as I mentioned prior to the podcast today, Bob, retired Colonel, Marine Corps Colonel John Barnett. His son is now in the Marine Corps. I have another great friend, Kevin, who served in the Army prior to me knowing him in college, and now his son is in the Army as well. You do see that so often, and I think that's such an honorable trait to follow in your mother or father's footsteps, is to be able to go and serve our country and fight for the freedom and liberties that we have and that we oftentimes take for granted. I'd like to, I don't normally do this, Bob, but I'd like to really jump into to talk about the book and to talk about the Patriot Promise Foundation. So I'm going to ask you, so you started working on this book several years ago. You've gone through obviously serving our country, then coming out and realizing some of the struggles that our veterans face coming into the civilian world. And then you got this book, you've written it, published it. Was there a specific moment or something that you experienced that said, okay, I need to write this book. I need to help others through the process?
So when, there's a kind of a story that goes along with this, is that when I left active duty about 6 months after I got back from Desert Storm, for no explainable reason, I started having incredibly violent nightmares. And I wasn't on the ground in combat. I flew in a B-52, but somehow my subconscious was having trouble dealing with what had gone on. So I had these nightmares, and 6 months after they started, they just stopped. And so, I didn't know why that happened, but off I went. And about 16 years later, for no explained reason, the nightmares came back, but they came back with a vengeance. And I had struggled with what I've learned are now symptoms of PTSD. I suffered from depression, irritability, relationship problems, and things like that. And the nightmares and my inability to sleep because of those really put me in a pretty difficult spot. And I just was not the husband I wanted to be, the father I wanted to be, the person I wanted to be. And it got to the point where, I was drinking a little bit more alcohol just to get myself to be able to sleep. And it just wasn't working. And I got to the point where I admitted to myself that I wasn't solving the problems. So I went to the VA. And I was just explaining to someone yesterday that at that time, it wasn't like just walk into the VA and get help. I had to convince people that I needed help. And it was a little unfortunate because it made it more difficult than what it needed to be. But I was extremely fortunate in the counselor the therapist that I got. She's been phenomenal. I told her when I met with her, I said, I will do absolutely everything that you ask me to do, and I will be your best patient. And I think I lived up to that. I worked extremely hard at the things that she asked me to, and it made a big difference. But I still had, it's not a straight line. You don't just go in for a couple of weeks and then you come out the other side. So it's something I've worked on for the last almost 12 years.
Okay.
And I decided that whether it's for myself or the feeling that I need to help as many people as possible, I just didn't think it was right that veterans are just kind of left to figure it out on their own. And the other thing I noticed is that, there's a lot of efforts to find a vet a job or to do things just to kind of help them get by. And I feel like veterans have so much more potential and that they have so much capability that's what the impetus of starting from service to success is, that I feel that veterans can have great success and that their best days are not behind them and that they can reach as high a level as anyone can. And so that was really what got me into doing some research to help create a roadmap for how veterans can really learn from some of the adversity and then really decide how do they want to live the rest of their life? How can they achieve the best life that they can?
So it's not just about veterans surviving after their service to our country. It's how do they thrive? Right.
So what happens with a veteran, and your friend John probably can relate to this because he was at Parris Island, they take recruits from all over the country, and they don't care about your baggage. They don't care about your individual thought. They have one job, and that's to take you through boot camp and give you a brand new mission in life. And that's the military's mission and purpose. And they do it extremely well. And so what I call is they take many to one. They take many different backgrounds and they kind of squeeze it all into a box, and you come out with one defining mission. And of course, everyone gets specialized training. They go through all kinds of different training. but it's really to give them one mission. And then when we're done with our military, we go back from one to many. And that's where we have to figure out our own path. And some people believe that what they do in the military has such a high calling, and they achieve such high levels of performance that they really believe that that was their ultimate calling, and that they've achieved the best things that they can in life. And I'm just telling people that it's not enough just to get out and survive, that each person has within them a very special purpose. And it's up to us as individuals and society to help each veteran discover their new purpose in life. I say if you need a boot camp to go into the military, we need a reboot to get back into our civilian lives to find our real purpose.
Wow, I love what you said. From a person like myself, Bob, who's never served in the military, and of course a lot of our Bamboo Pack audience hasn't either, what you just said regarding the military is designed to bring all these different people from all over the country, different cultures, experiences, and turn those many into one single mission. And now when they come back out and service into the civilian world, it's now you have to take that one and turn them, to acclimate them to the many. And I think that really, in such a simple phrase, made a lot of sense to me. Of really what, and if you had to say anything in one sentence to kind of explain the process of what veterans go through, and just to share with, kind of what the necessary journey is, what the journey is when they go into the military, and then what it is after they come out, I think that was the perfect statement. I really am curious about the book, obviously. So what would, if you could phrase up, and I think you just did, but what is the number one thing you are hoping and you are accomplishing with this book currently, and then you hope to continue accomplishing with the book?
Well, as I look at the book, it's really not just for the veterans themselves. I really picture maybe a husband and wife, or mother, son, or friends, maybe reading it together and learning about what it's like to be a veteran. Because what I tried to do is not only share my experiences as a veteran, but I also interviewed a number of other veterans that have gone through adversity and have found their way of achieving their success. And so, there's roughly 11 million veterans, or there's 22 million veterans, and about 11 million of those struggle. And there's very common complaints from the veterans. They feel isolated, and they feel like no one understands them. And so you have a group of 11 million people that feel isolated, and they don't want to talk about their experiences. And so it's not hard to see why people don't understand veterans. And so this book is just meant to be a roadmap of helping average people understand what veterans are going through, and then providing a roadmap of, hey, if we do these types of things and reconnect with people, reconnect with friends, learn how to be grateful. There are certain things that we can do that change the way our minds work and open us up to start thinking of life in a different way than I used to be in the military.
Okay. So is there some form of reframing the identity of the individual? Of now I'm not just a Air Force veteran or an Army, Marine, Naval, or a Coast Guard veteran. It's kind of creating a new identity almost, isn't it?
It is. And it doesn't happen overnight. And it's not the thing that I want to encourage veterans is, there's no truck that's going to drive up from Amazon that's going to deliver your new life. It's not just going to show up. It's something that you have to work at. When we go into say, boot camp or officers training school, and we go to navigator training or, ranger school or whatever the specialties are, they're hard work. You put in a lot of effort, and the training is substantial. But the reward for that training is it's almost like a superhuman power of the things that you can accomplish that you could not accomplish before your training. And military people can accomplish amazing things, but it's through the hard work and the training that they've gone through. So we can't get out of the military and expect that we're not going to have to do the same level of work and effort to turn our lives into something that's very special on the civilian side.
I can really attest to what you said about military veterans can accomplish so much. The companies that I have coached over the years have, thankfully, and I'm going to give one shout out to a company that has been incredibly proactive about this, which is CG Financial. They have hired many retired military veterans, and they have all that from what I can remember, everyone I've worked with so far is succeeding exceedingly well within the company in the corporate world. And I know so much of that is attributed to their background as a military individual, in the training they've gone through, the discipline, the structure that they've endured over the years. And so there are so many companies out there in the private sector, as well as publicly traded companies, who are hiring veterans, and they are exceeding in dramatic ways.
Yeah, the thing that veterans have, when they go to an interview, they don't know, okay, I was a Humvee driver or I was a B-52 navigator. Well, how does that translate into a civilian job? Well, it doesn't. But what does translate is I'm extremely adaptable. You put me into any situation, I will learn how to succeed in that environment. I have great resourcefulness, problem-solving skills, and I work exceptionally well in a team environment. Those are kinds of skills that any employer wants. So it's not whether or not you can shoot a machine gun or drive a Humvee. It's these other soft skills that you have as a veteran that really do help them excel.
I love that. So a question for you now, as the audience is sitting there, and I've told you prior, I know we have a large number of current military individuals as well as military veterans who listen to our podcast because we hear from them. But would you say that other people could use this material from Service to Success, even if they didn't serve in the military?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. The things that the book talks about are things that you don't have to have gone through trauma. You don't have to have gone through military service. They're attitudes and I'd call it mental shaping that people can benefit from whatever walk of life. Starting to practice gratitude to shift your mindset is something that everyone can benefit from. So all the steps in the book From Service to Success, it can help anyone who wants to achieve something greater than what they've been doing. And I also use the term choosing something that's greater than yourself. Mm-hmm. That call to service is something that I think military people have experienced in their service, but there are activities and things to do that call everyone to serve their fellow man or fellow person to help others where they struggle.
And that's what I noticed in going through the book. And I thought to myself that a lot of our Bamboo Pack members obviously didn't serve in the military or didn't serve on a police force or were not former firefighters who didn't go through that type of experience. But many of them, I use the term, they feel stuck on the hamster wheel in life. They feel like they're spinning and they're not really going in the direction they want to go. And a lot of them, quite frankly, they've reached out to me. They have gone through traumatic events, non-military related, incest, rape, abuse, health issues, challenges of that nature, financial crises. Things that are not military related, but still put them in a position where they might be facing some type of PTSD. And so that's why I really wanted to point that out to all the Bamboo Pack members. This book is not just for military veterans and their family and loved ones. The information here can serve you as well. And just what Bob just said, two big things that are in every piece of literature I read on professional development, personal development, law of attraction, whatever it might be, they all use those two talk about those two topics, showing gratitude for what we currently have in the life we live and serving something greater than yourself. Serving your loved ones, your community, the world, whatever it might be, being a person who performs acts of service on a consistent basis. Those two actions can get us off the hamster wheel so quickly. I mean, it's not like you do it once and you're good, but over time and consistently can be two major tools to use to get you off that hamster wheel, to help you fight through the demons that you're facing in life. So, if I'm a loved one, if I'm a veteran or one of my loved ones is a veteran, Bob, how would we know if somebody needs professional help? I mean, I know you talk about 5 things for them to know. What do they search for? Because some people are so stuck in their own mind, or you might have a loved one that you may not want to admit they need professional help, but you see these signs and symptoms in there. What should those people know to help them determine whether they need professional assistance or not?
Okay, so there's some common things that show up in veterans who might need help. The first thing is sleep deprivation. I personally am very sensitive to not getting sleep, but so when I first went to the VA, they did a sleep study, and my legs were moving 270 times in an hour.
Ooh.
And so that was from all the nightmares and all the trauma I was going through. But if you know a veteran who isn't getting sleep, whether it's because of nightmares, whether it's because of some of these other things, but they're just not getting sleep, then that's a real sign.
Okay.
If the veteran needs alcohol or some kind of substance just to get through the day, they can't get through the day unless they have a number of drinks or they're taking substance. That's a true sign that they need help. If they're struggling with their relationships, and a very common experience among veterans is irritability. And I've tried to describe the irritability is everyone has someone that says the wrong thing at the wrong time. If you have family members, there's probably someone that can kind of get under your skin sometimes. That's not the irritability I'm talking about. It's like this irritability, everyone's saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. Or just as you look out into the world, it looks like a bunch of thorns. It's just, it's hard to describe, but that's an irritability that causes relationships to be really hard. So if someone's struggling with relationships, that's a tough thing. And then there's 2 that kind of are associated together. One is depressed people tend to want to be alone, and it's the opposite of what they need. And so this feeling of isolation. So if someone's backing away in their relationships, sometimes, we kind of let that person go. But in this case, we need to kind of re-engage and make sure that we don't let these people be isolated. And then if you see someone that they're struggling financially and they think they might lose their home, or they could be homeless, that's an obvious sign for need of help. And then the last one is if they are talking, and surprisingly, people will talk about having feelings of harming someone or harming themselves. And we need to be good listeners for that kind of language. And that's a for sure sign that they need help. So those are just some of the main characteristics to watch for in someone.
Okay, I'm going to repeat those for the bamboo pack. So, because I think so often, especially when it's ourselves who are feeling something, we're almost like the boiled frog. We don't really notice that we're sitting in boiled water until it's too late.
Exactly.
And I think this is a perfect. So, for anyone out there who you yourself or you're noticing a loved one is facing, some of one or more of these challenges, sleep deprivation, incredibly important. I mean, you described your legs, how when you got your sleep test. I always call that the Jimmy legs. I think I got that from a Seinfeld episode, But sleep deprivation, a big one. If someone has to use alcohol or drugs or some other form of intoxication to get through the day, big one. And relationship challenges. If you find that you or yourself are just irritable quite often, you look out there and you see kind of the world as a bunch of thorns, and that is one of those, that can really draw you in, which is the fourth one, someone who just wants to be alone, isolate themselves because they feel depressed, or maybe they're going through a financial challenge, or maybe they're homeless, or just making really, really irrational decisions with their money. But isolation. And then the last one is anyone who's talking of harming themselves or others. And that's a very blatant one. I saw in your book, and I've opened it up because I wanted to share this, everyone. Bob wrote on page 15 of the book is daily suicidal behaviors of veterans. 5,500 seriously consider suicide. 1,600 make suicide plans. 640 attempt suicide, and 22 die of suicide. And the reason I brought that up right now, the statistic up, is because if we can start applying looking at these 5 attributes or causes or symptoms, I guess they are, in ourselves or in others, maybe we can get that number down even further and further and further to the point where it's the bottom number is finally 0. And again, if you're not a military vet or don't have a military vet in your immediate family, look at those yourself and ask yourself, do I match these characteristics? Are these symptoms of some things I'm going through? If so, Bob's book, From Service to Success, is for you. So again, I'll have a link to it on the bottom of the podcast. If you find that financially, hey, I just can't afford a book right now, reach out. I'm getting you a book. So, Bob, what practical advice would you offer to a veteran? Really, what are some of the first steps for a veteran to take if they find themselves, I need this. I need to learn how to not only thrive in the civilian world, or not only to survive, but to thrive in the civilian world. I'm facing some of these 5 symptoms.
So first of all, if someone's suicidal, there's a 988 emergency number that they can reach out and get help. So anyone that is, thinking about taking their life, that's something that there is help. And so that 988 number is something to reach out. I think for other people that are just, wanting to achieve more in life, I think start educating yourselves. This book, find a friend, find a spouse, someone to sit down with and read through it together. There's some accountability with that. And then there's some natural dialogue that happens. A spouse or friend can say, I didn't realize that you had experienced anything like that. And it gives a chance for a veteran to share some of their experiences. So I would just really encourage people. And the reason why I'm doing this, Brian, is that I'm not super comfortable with sharing some of my, mental health struggles. It's not normal for people to stand up and start talking about their depression or irritability or their relationship struggles. But, if I had broken my leg or if I had twisted my wrist, I could talk easily about that kind of stuff. But it's the mental health challenges that are really uncomfortable for most people. And so the biggest part of writing this book and the biggest thing that I'm trying to have impact on is if more people can read the book and I can I can talk about my challenges, then maybe other people can start to talk about it. Because depression is kind of a normal thing. It's not so abnormal. And there are things that people can do that, we can put some of these mental health challenges behind us and live a great life. So I think that's the big thing, is start talking, start sharing your experiences. And if you have a friend or someone that you know that's a veteran, start listening and being available to them. Be a good friend.
That's thank you for sharing that, because a lot of times, and I have friends who have served in the military, and I shared prior to the recording today, Bob, that I know have gone through this, and if I can relate to PTSD from my perspective that I've gone through as a child, but I can't relate to it from a military perspective, and so I found myself at times at odds of how do I support my friend? How do I help this person or that person? And I still see it in some. Not real close friends today, but some fringe friends that I associate with on occasion. I see how their inability, or not inability, but the fact that they haven't taken care of some of these challenges, and how it has affected their life in really adverse and not such positive areas. Is there, so as you're going through this, and obviously serving as a veteran and then serving as a person who's now really helping to get veterans to success in life, do you find that there really is a consistent strategies that veterans can follow in getting from service to success?
I do. And that's really the fundamental points of the book. There's some things that, it starts, in my opinion, making sure that you're getting sleep and taking care of the basic necessities. But having gratitude starts to open the mind. It's like tilling the land. It prepares the mind to start thinking about things in a different way. And it changes a person from thinking about all the troubles and struggles that they have to experiencing what life has to offer. So gratitude is a huge first step. And then as they go through, it's understanding that you have to create a brand new, what's called a paradigm. A good example of a paradigm is we took all of our life experiences, and then when we went to boot camp, they created a whole new mental paradigm of what we were going to do and how we were going to live. Well, when we get out, we have to construct a brand new paradigm for how we're going to live. And we have to kind of rewrite some of our false beliefs. So there are mental practices that we can do that are in this book that help us to rewrite that paradigm that starts us in a direction of being able to understand and set goals of much greater happiness in our lives.
It's so interesting that you say that, Bob, because thought leaders for generations have been saying some of these same things, and they're so powerful. As I walk through your book, and another thing you talk about a lot is just, get moving. Get your, I think what was something I read was nervous system, get your nervous system in check, or something to talk about action and moving the body and taking care of your physical being. But one of the things that you just said really hit home for me. And that was, because we've already talked about, sleep and taking care of your basic needs. And we talked about gratitude, how powerful that is, but changing and creating a new paradigm. There was a thought leader, I believe he's passed away now. He actually started the Franklin Planner Company, and he wrote many books. His name was Hiram Smith. And he had a really good analogy. He said, as we walk around this world, we have a big plate glass window that's always following us in front of us. And everything you look at, you see it through that plate glass window. And so you don't really see reality. You see reality from your own perspective and through your own paradigm. And he said, over the course of time, you and culture and family and teachers and all these experiences you've had in your life have taken a dry erase marker and written all these beliefs and biases and experiences on your window. So pretty soon you're not even seeing what's beyond the window. You're just seeing your prejudices, your bias, your experiences, all the things that your beliefs, that's what you're seeing. And so, and he uses the example, you have to take a dry marker eraser and erase that sometimes and really see what's beyond that plate glass window. And then you can start creating new experiences, new beliefs, new values. And I think what we talk about with the paradigm is exactly that. We have to sometimes clear that plate glass window that's in front of us so we can actually see reality out there and create something new and something better and more improved for us. So I think that's extremely powerful. And again, everybody out there, as he's talking, do you understand what he's saying here? His focus is with veterans and veterans' families. And we all know veterans. Many of you were veterans, and we all know and love veterans. But even if you weren't, this book has got some incredible stuff in it. Trust me. I read a lot of professional, personal development books, psychology, metaphysics, law of attraction books. This right here has everything in it for just about, if not every person out there. And we're going to have links to it. We're going to have links to how you can help support the cause that Bob is spearheading, which was my next question, Bob, is whether a person is a veteran or not, how can we out there help? What can we do as a population, as a listener of the podcast?
I formed the Patriot Promise Foundation. There's like 48,000 veteran service organizations in the country. It's just a massive number of groups that are trying to help veterans. The problem that I see is a lot of them don't play well together. And, they have very narrow focus, like help a vet get a job or teaching vets how to do certain things. And I see that as just a kind of a narrow focus. And so my hope is that veteran service organizations can kind of come together. And the hope of Patriot Promise Foundation is ultimately to create what I am calling the Patriot Promise Academy, where we'll help veterans go through some of the roadmap that's in this book, but to actually leave the academy with a clear understanding of what their new mission and new purpose is and how they can achieve that. So in the short term, I want to get as many books. I'd love to get 100,000 books in the hands of veterans. And the way that I'm hoping to do that is for people to go to the Patriot Promise website, patriotpromise.org. If they order a book, I'll automatically donate a book to a veteran. They can also buy one and donate 5 or buy one and donate 10. And I'm taking these books. I just got one of the best calls that I've ever had. My wife and I drove south and we delivered some books off to the VA in Louisville. And, not knowing what was going to happen with the books or how it was going to go. And, on our way back up about 4 weeks later, I got a call from the person that we handed the books off to. And he said, I just got a call from this department and they want more books. The veterans love the books and they're using them in group therapy. And so that made my day, my week, my month. It just made me feel so good that these books that people are helping me donate are getting into the hands of veterans and starting these conversations. So in my opinion, the first step is to try and get these books donated into the hands of veterans. That's
so honorable, Bob. I'm going to definitely, for all the Bamboo Pack audience out there will be a link at the bottom of this podcast for the patriotpromise.org. Please click on that. I mean, like I said, look at what they're offering. I'm going to really highly recommend purchase at least one book. If you have the capacity, purchase more. Bob matches that. We need to get these in the hands of the veterans out there the 11 million who are struggling. That's a large number. They put their life, their time on the line for us, served our country, protected our shores, protected our liberties and freedoms, and not just ours, but liberties and freedoms around the world. This is the least we could do. I know the Bamboo Pack will be buying some. And like I said, if you find out there that, hey, I really want this book, Brian, I'm just right now, I can't financially, I can't do it. We're going paycheck to paycheck. Reach out to me. We'll get a book in your hand for sure. And Bob will match that. So please click on the link below. It'll have everything you need in it that really help Bob, the cause that Bob is spearheading here. That is, it's one of the most worthy causes I have seen in such a long time. Bob, I have a question. Obviously you served for many years. Then, of course, you were in the civilian world, in the business world, private sector, and have succeeded there, continue to. But then you went to writing this book over the past several years. While writing this book, what would you say was the greatest learning you had in that time frame?
Just the deep understanding of how consistent the struggles are among veterans. I didn't ask to experience depression. It wasn't on my things. It wasn't on my wish list.
Right.
And what I'm learning is that I don't understand fully why. I think I have some ideas on how veterans have been kind of reprogrammed through boot camps and things like that. And they feel like they've achieved so much in the military, and then they come back to kind of just Joe average, or that's how their perception of it is. And it just doesn't seem like it's as rewarding. But I think that was my biggest learning, was to see how consistent. The other thing that I've learned is that I couldn't write this book and then just hide behind it. I couldn't just write a book about it and then publish it and put it out there. When I started to realize that I was going to have to go out and kind of share my story, I can remember it being kind of a little bit unsettling.
Sure. That
I was going to have to be on a podcast like this, sharing some of my most personal pains. But then I started to realize that there's a benefit for other people by my sharing these stories. And so that was a big learning curve for me, was to realize that you can't, writing a book is not free. There's stuff that goes along with it. And so I'm happy that I can do this. As
you talk, Bob, one of the things, and I want to share this to all the veterans out there and their family, we have and you mentioned this earlier when you talked about we can talk a lot about breaking our leg, and we can talk openly about some injury or illness we have, but when it comes to mental health, we tend to really shut that down. And one of the benefits I've had in my career, Bob, and now especially in the past 14 months of this podcast, is being able to work intimately with so many people, and also in the podcast, getting to know so many people around the world. And depression, alcoholism, drug abuse, irritability, financial failure, relationship challenges, those are such stigmas that we carry with us in this country, in this world. And in reality, what I've learned is so many people, successful people who you would never, in our old way, in the old paradigm we have, would never think they have any of these problems. And in reality, many of them have them. And in fact, a lot of them will attribute to the fact that they've gone through those challenges is why they're successful, why they're well balanced, why they're happy and content in life right now, and have good relationships with themselves and others. So there is the stigma that we carry about these issues, these challenges that are more previously were very, very personal. Those stigmas have to go away because they are more prominent as broken arms and broken legs. They are as common out there. And trust me, as a person who talks to a lot of people and gets very intimate and close with them on the phone or on or in person or now on the podcast, you are not alone out there. You are not alone. You are amongst a very large, very amazing group of people. And we can take away, you can use the challenges that we face, the mental health issues, the alcoholism, the relationship issues, the financial struggles that you might face or have faced. You can turn those into an incredible catapult to amazing success and happiness in life. And so many people have done it. I think it's just amazing. You talk a little bit about another question, Bob, is in the book, you talk, obviously the title is From Service to Success. When you talk about success, what does that mean from the perspective of what you're bringing to the veterans? And does that mean, does success mean something different to different people?
Absolutely. So one of the people that I considered to be a mentor was Bob Proctor.
Oh, yeah.
Bob passed away a couple of years ago, but I had the good fortune of being part of their inner circle, worked on some of their mastermind programs, and really had a chance. Bob inspired me to write this book and kind of coached me in a couple ways. But he instilled this, the ability to kind of think beyond where we're currently at. And so one of the books that Bob talked about frequently was just a disciple of it, was Think and Grow Rich. And a lot of people kind of shun the book because, rich, what does that mean? Does it mean, just having a lot of things, having a lot of money? And that's not what rich is. Being rich or being wealthy means sharing, and they say circulating the wealth. So it's not the accumulation of the yachts and the planes and the big homes and things like that. That's having a good life is part of success, but also having the ability to help others is part of success. It's part of being rich. So rich and wealthy is how other people define it. And wealthy to me is having the ability to share and help others. As a business owner, for example, I currently have 60 employees. We'll probably have over 100 by the end of this year. But I am not as motivated by my own personal success as I am by the success of the people that I have in my company. So I want to create wealth for everyone that works here. I hope that, people in my customer service team can become millionaires. I hope that they can find ways of generating their own wealth, how they define it. So a lot of it is what motivates you personally is how you define success.
I love that. In fact, I'm so glad you brought up Bob Proctor. I think it was his final book, Change Your Paradigm, Change Your Life, is the next book on my list at Amazon for me to order. And I just finished The Secret, which he is obviously quoted in there quite often. I love what you said, Bob, because I had a guest on, and I'll give a shout out to Jimmy Smith out of Bend, Oregon, from the Smith Fitness and Martial Arts Studio. And in a pre-interview, before we were on air, a few weeks before he and I did a podcast, he said something, I'm going to paraphrase him, but he said something like, Brian, I chased money all of my life, and it always eluded me. But then when I made my mission and purpose in life, it was to serve 1 million people, wealth and money started finding me very sexy. He turned his paradigm. He switched that paradigm. I paraphrase. So Jimmy, I know that wasn't your exact quote, but that's how I heard it. And I think that's so powerful as we succeed in life, as we grow, overcome our challenges, turn our challenges and adversities into strengths and successes, we can do that by helping others. And also, that's probably the best way. I think Ziegler said, if you want to be successful, help more people, or something to that effect. But also when we do that, we role model for other people. We act as a role model to tell other people, hey, you can do it as well. And I just think there's so much beauty in that. And Bob, I'm 55 years old. And honestly, I didn't really realize this act of serving others was my primary purpose, probably until 5 or 6, 7 years ago. And it really has become now my sole purpose is to reach more people through the podcast and my coaching. And it is amazing how if you do that, a lot of times the money comes in because you're going.
It comes to you.
Yes, exactly. It's like the law of attraction.
Right. I don't worry about money anymore. I know that sounds kind of silly, but there was a time in my business when it was brand new. We had an investor that was supposed to invest $1 million and started with $500,000. And the next tranche was supposed to come in November. In October, they pulled the rug out from under us. And some of the things that happened after that, like, for example, there was a day that I didn't have enough money for payroll on Thursday. I think it was Tuesday. And we were out there raising money and it was coming in maybe slower than what it needed to. And so I used all my credit cards. I'd used anyone that I knew I borrowed money from. And I just didn't have any other way of getting the money for payroll. It was only $16,000 at the time, but I just didn't have it. And so I sat at my desk with my head in my hands, and my receptionist came in, and she didn't know that I was struggling with this coming payroll. She didn't know anything about it. And she said, I talked to my husband, and we decided we're going to invest $20,000 into the company. How does that happen? You know, I had one of my employees came and said, you know, I talked to my husband and we really don't need my wages for the next couple of months. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that, you know, I cried like a baby.
I'm sure you did.
And, but the thing about money is if you're doing the right thing and you're focused on other people and, the law of attraction, I'm a firm believer in that money will come to you. And so I just don't worry about it anymore. I just know that I'm going to focus on doing the right things.
It's so difficult, Bob. I mean, you probably experienced this prior to your understanding and use of the law of attraction. It's so difficult for people to fully grasp that concept. And it was for me for so many years. And that was always about chasing the dollar, you know, increase my fee for service, book more appointments, in which I still, you know, obviously have to do those things. But that was my focus for so many years. And it really was a struggle. I've been doing what I do now for 26 years of coaching and speaking. And I would say the first half they were okay. You know, they were good. We paid, you know, raised family, paid the bills. But it wasn't really until the last probably 7, 8 years where really letting go of that desire, that need to bring in more money and bring in more and more and more, and to just wait a minute. I've got a gift here and I've got some experience and wisdom. Let's make the world a better place for it. And I have a statement that I pray every morning and I pray every evening, Bob, and I ask God to help me to sculpt lives so that people can live their true peak identity and therefore influence the world and inspire the world. And that to me has become my primary mantra and motive now, is just to help people sculpt their lives so they can live up to their true peak identity and their true level, and then therefore inspire the world and just make this big snowball impact that can.
That's awesome.
It's so much more liberating. And I don't know about you, Bob, when I found that, and this even happened more so over the past 12 months. I find myself much more relaxed. I feel it in my shoulders, my stomach, where I would hold a lot of tension before. Now I feel more relaxed because it's what you're doing and what you're doing out there is not just bringing more into you. It's giving so much more to others. And there's a beauty. I had a guest last week on, Bob, and the episode will air 1 week before yours with a gentleman by the name of Art DeLorenzo. And he has a company in Manhattan called Maximize Your Talent, and they specialize in emotional competency and helping individuals, develop their emotional competency. And he said a quote that stuck with me. It is actually the title of the podcast, that random acts of kindness is the greatest sleeping pill. And he said, because when you go to bed at night and when you do something, hold a door for somebody, pick up somebody's purse if they drop it, whatever it might be, when you look in that person's eyes and you go to bed that night, your subconscious and conscious mind will remember that face. And when you go to bed, you will sleep much, much better. And it's, it's a physiological, not just psychological.
Law of increase.
Yeah, I love it. And I have two more questions, and this one is an interesting one for me, and I kind of wanted to save it till the end, but I know that there is this experimentation, or not, I don't know if that's the right word, but with using MDMA to help veterans. Can you expand on that? Because I think the audience would really like to hear that. And I know I would. Of how you're using that to really help veterans to not just survive, but to thrive.
So, yeah, Brian, they've started doing some clinical trials of both psilocybin and a drug called MDMA, which people probably know it on the street as ecstasy. But ecstasy on the street is different than this kind of more pure MDMA. So I had mentioned that I suffered from depression and irritability, not just the last 10 years that I've been treated for it, but for probably 16 years untreated before that. And so my treatment for that has been these SSRIs, a drug called Cymbalta. And it turns out that Cymbalta is actually addictive. And all these drugs have side effects. And so, for me, it made it harder for me to wake up in the day. It made it harder for me to get going. And as a CEO, that's kind of a tough side effect.
Sure.
But there were other side effects. And again, I just wasn't feeling like my best version. And so I had an opportunity recently to receive a treatment of MDMA. And it's in a very controlled environment, with a very qualified counselor. And the treatment transformed my life. So I'll tell you just a little bit about my experience. I experienced what felt to me like a very ancient ritual of cleansing. It was very spiritual. I felt the presence of, not only my spirit, but that of someone else. I didn't see, I didn't experience visual things. So this was basically where I felt like my entire spirit was cleansed. And the result of that is that the irritability that I had, or the anger, or the depression, it's all gone. It's gone. And I'm experiencing life completely differently. When I talked about boot camp and then reboot, I feel like I've had a mental reboot. And I'm just excited about being a proponent of these treatments for veterans who have PTSD. What I experienced was a spiritual cleansing, a healing, and something very transformative in my life. And I don't know how it sounds to listen to this story, but it's something that has been probably February 1st of this year will be what I consider almost like a rebirth. It was that significant.
Well, I can honestly say from my perspective, and I'm going to speak probably for the vast majority of the Bamboo Pack, we're extremely happy that it's transformed your life. And I think what you just offered us, Bob, was what you mentioned earlier, a paradigm shift. Because it's something I had heard about this experimentation or this treatment before, but just in casual conversations. Nothing. I just heard the term ecstasy, and then being used for treating PTSD and things of that nature. But it never to what you just shared, the purified. We're not talking about ecstasy you find on the streets. We're talking about a purified form in a controlled environment. And that's the beauty of so many things that we see in society as a negative, because they've been misused as a negative. I mean, anything can be misused as I do a lot of protein shakes and a lot of health food. But if I just did that, if I ate the same thing every day, every meal, it's probably going to eventually harm my body. I got to put other things in there. So you could use some of these things that could be negative, that seem negative, for a very healthy, positive benefit in life. So I think that's really incredibly honorable and courageous of you to try that, to do it. I'm just so happy it's working for you. And I'd love to see other veterans be able to, try that treatment, and hopefully, as you said, transform their lives. Find that spiritual cleansing and healing that you have found. So that's very, very, very admirable. And I think I'd like for the Bamboo Pack to research that a little bit more out there. Check that out a little bit, especially if it's something, and maybe that'll be something you can do through the Patriot Foundation. .org, which we'll have on here in the next, or patriotpromise.org, we'll have on the bottom of the podcast. But looking into that stuff can be very beneficial. And in my opinion, when you're dealing with issues of depression or irritability or suicide thoughts or alcohol or drug abuse, I mean, just about anything is worth a try. It really is. And especially when it has a controlled environment, a purified form of something like this, MDMA. Hey, why not put it into consideration? It's working for a lot of people, and it's really working well for our distinguished guest here, and Bob. So, Bob, I've got one more final question, and I would like if you and I could jump on a time machine right now, and we were to fly back to that moment when you were 6 months out of Desert Storm, and you were having these incredibly violent nightmares. If you could go back to that point in time and sit on a park bench with your former younger self, what advice or what direction or what words of wisdom would you share with that person who was going through those first initial stages of PTSD with those violent nightmares?
Well, Brian, you kind of struck an emotional chord with me. That's actually probably the biggest regret that I have in my life, is that I waited an additional 16 years after that to get the help that I needed. Maybe I wasn't ready back then, but I wish I could tell myself that that there's a better version of yourself, that what you're feeling, the emotions that you're feeling, the challenges that you're having, you don't have to try and solve them yourself. I think about that a lot. But, I am who I am. I've overcome the adversity. You can't go back in time and redo things. But I think that is the one thing I'd like to do, is to, and I hear many veterans say, I wish I would have gotten help sooner. But that's definitely one that I wish I could have sat on that bed and said, these struggles that you're having, you don't have to do this by yourself.
Well, I firmly believe it, and maybe I'm a little Pollyannish, and I'm an optimist in life, but I believe that things all happen for a reason. And my assumption is, if I was a betting man, a money betting man, which I'm not, if I was, I would bet my next 7 paychecks that if Bob Taylor had gotten that help immediately, I don't know that you'd be impacting the world the way you are today. So maybe there was a silver lining in that cloud. And maybe it was a cost to you, of course, of 16 years of having to go through a lot of challenges that you would have probably missed out and not had to suffer through. But it made you the man you are today, and because of that, You are impacting the world in so many amazing ways, especially with our veterans here in our country. So I want to take what the message you just shared that you would share to your younger self, and I want to share it directly with the Bamboo Pack. So anyone out there right now who would consider, I'm kind of at that stage in life where Bob was when he was 6 months out of the military, out of Desert Storm. He was having these violent nightmares. He was really beginning to feel the challenges of his time of service. All of you are going through something, or you will, or you just got out of something, but all of us will go through another stage. We go through an average of about 3 average size crises every year, and sprinkled in between those, we have a lot of emergencies. We're all going through something, or soon will be. 2 great pieces of advice. There's a better version of yourself out there. There is a better version. If you're on that hamster wheel, or you are suffering right now, whether you're a veteran, a loved one of a veteran, or not, there's a better version of yourself out there. If you're feeling pain right now, and these challenges and these fears that you have and these feelings that you have, you don't have to solve them yourself. One of the things that Bob is doing with the book and the patriotpromise.org and the foundation is he's really sharing that this is a community of people who can help you. And if you're not military related, there's a community out there, whether it's friends, mentors, family, or getting help with a professional, a therapist. You don't have to do it alone. So there's a better version of yourself, and you don't have to go through this alone. Bob, was there any question that I didn't ask you as we wrap up that I should have asked you, or that you wish I would have, or any final statement you would like to leave with the audience?
Well, I think we had a great conversation. Like I said in the beginning, I'm very grateful for this time. I think if there's a message, what a great way to leave it is there's a better version of yourself, and you don't have to solve it on your own. I just wrote an article as part of this process. And what I said is make a friend, save a vet.
Ooh.
And we just need to do a better job of reaching out to people, listening to where they're at in life, and being open and honest about where we're at in our life, and being good friends to other people. And just understand that there are veterans out there that, against what common sense is, they're isolating themselves, they're pushing people away. Just be a friend. Just find a way to connect with people, and I think you'll be better for it. Or finding a veteran that needs someone, and also doing something that's greater than yourself. So that would be the thing that I would like to leave on.
I can't imagine a better statement to leave on. And you have now given me the title of today's podcast. And I love that. So everyone out there, and if I can, Bob, I'd like to include a link to that article. I'll find it. Maybe Liz can help me, or you can, to include a link to that if possible at the bottom of today's podcast. So all of you Bamboo Pack members, please click on that, as well as click on the link to the to the Patriot Promise Foundation. I'll have that on here, as well as a direct link to Bob's book, From Service to Success. This has been one of the most eye-opening podcasts I have done out of 70-some podcasts, Bob. And I just want to thank you, not for just being a guest on here, but it's really, for lack of a better word, I'll say lovely. I don't know why that word came up, but maybe an honor is better to have someone like you on here who is serving in such a selfless way to help other people, especially our veterans and their loved ones, to really move and change that paradigm, to realize that there is a better version of themselves out there, and they don't have to do it alone. I mean, this is the kind of people that we love having on the podcast, just like you, Bob, who are out there changing the world. And, you are the epitome of this podcast. You are an ordinary person doing extraordinary things. So from the bottom of my heart, and from all of us Bamboo Pack members, thank you for that. And please continue on. And please, all of us out there, let's please reach down, click on the links. We have a way to help the veterans out there. It's very simple to do. let's all chip in and do this. Let's continue Bob's cause. Let's help it to grow to that next level, and really to help those 11 million veterans out there who are really challenged right now, who are looking not just to thrive or to survive in life in the civilian world, but to thrive. And that's what this podcast is all about, is changing the world. And Bob is a perfect example of that. So Bob Taylor, my new friend, I just want to thank you for being such an amazing and distinguished guest on the Bamboo Lab podcast.
Thank you so very, very much.
Such an honor, such an honor. And I know we have a few minutes after we're done recording, but in the meantime, Bamboo Pack listeners, thank you so much again for tuning in. Thank you for hitting that like button, subscribing. Please rate and review us and share with us this podcast with 3 loved ones, especially those 3 veterans or loved ones of veterans that you know out there. Please pass it along, text it to them, recommend it, email it to them. We need to get this information out to them as quickly as is possible. And also, one last thing, anybody out there who would like to, we added a lot more new questions today. And a lot of this was inspired by Bob and his team. But if you like any of the questions that you heard today that we're not normally asking on the podcast, or if you have any questions you'd like us to ask our amazing guests, please write us to them. I'm not saying we'll use them all, but we'll definitely, we're okay changing up some of the questions we normally ask. All right, everyone, we'll see you in 7 days out there. In the meantime, please get out there and sculpt your life. Please, as Bob said, there's a better version of yourself out there. Please sculpt your life. Find that true peak identity that you can live, that highest level of yourself. And then from there, inspire the world. I appreciate every single one of you. Every single one of you. You humble me each week. And you have no idea how many times that I get letters and emails and texts from people. And it just makes me smile. And a few have made me cry. So in the meantime, everyone, I care about you all. Until next time.